Good day, fellow survivor, and welcome back to another episode of Hammer D20, the show that makes sure that all of its collectibles are covered in a thin veil of protective plastic. My name is Steven Sobot, and I will be your guide. Today, we're going to focus on a couple of topics, such as arcades, pinball, streaming services, as well as how to take care of your collectibles, just to name a few. Initially, when I was making this episode, I was going to focus exclusively on just hockey cards, because Hamilton has a whole bunch of sports card stores located all around town. And since the hockey season is well underway, I figured it'd be a bit of a hot topic. And not only that, I've been introduced through a family fantasy hockey league. So day in and day out, I've been kind of focusing on the stats, the numbers, the players, the league. And I mean, like, if I can do a whole episode about my fantasy hockey league team, I would. Don't get me started, right? But the thing is, I don't think any of you were really that interested in my specific fantasy hockey league team. In fact, I don't even think anybody in the league itself is actually really that interested in my own team. But anyway, back to hockey cards. I try to get in contact with many of those stores, but none of them really got in contact with me. Maybe it was because their social media wasn't active, maybe they weren't responding to emails, maybe it was just because the lockdown was still in place, they didn't really think it was a good opportunity to really kind of get any motion with that. No problem, I'm not discerning, I'm not saying any of them are bad. One did get back in contact with me, mind you, and they said that they didn't want to be on TV. And the reason is because while the conception is that you think that you're going to get kind of more customers or more people kind of interested into what the store is and buying new product, really what they've found is that when that happens, they get a lot of people coming to the store trying to shill off their old retro cards and vintage kind of hockey cards that they think are worth something, but in reality are worth pennies to the dollar. Which brings upon an interesting point. It makes you think, well, what is it that determines a collectible's value? We all have this idea that something that's vintage or something that's maybe 30, 40 years old has to be worth something. But in reality, sometimes it just isn't worth that. So being as someone who's a bit of an expert in collecting stuff and has my piles of magic cards and video games, I figured I may as well be enough of an expert of a voice to kind of give you, my viewer, a bit of a tutorial as to what it is that determines a collectible's value and what you should be looking for yourself when you're going through your old bins of stuff to see if you've got anything worth anything. Steven, let's go over and check out some collectibles. Oh, well, thank you, Steven. So I've got my pile of hockey cards, I got my Pokemon cards, I got my retro video games, I've got my comic books. So, how do I determine if any of these things have any value? Well, let's go through the main elements which determine a collectible's value and see if anything I've got right here is worth any money. Let's go on. So, the most important element of collectibles is its importance and its context. This one seems pretty obvious. Is the item itself important to somebody and important in some way? And is the context of the collectible in the grand scheme of that collectible significant? For video games, you can attribute this to whether the game's actually fun to play or is generally popular. A game like Super Smash Bros. Melee still goes for around $100 because it's one of the best games in the GameCube, even though there are millions of copies of this game. For hockey cards, this usually is attributed to their historical importance. Are they one of the greatest to ever play, or are they just some random scrub? For trading card games like Magic or Pokemon, this usually considers how powerful the card is in the context of the game. This applies more to recently printed cards more often, because newly made powerful cards are wanted by competitive players, driving up their value. That being said, certain cards in these trading card games hold historical context as well, and that also drives up their price. The most notable examples of such are Magic's Black Lotus and Pokemon's Charizard card. In terms of comic books, certain comics are high in value because they introduce a character, or are a significant plot point in the story. They are usually significant when a movie or TV show features said character or plot point. For example, The Amazing Spider-Man issue 129 goes for around $1,500 because it's the first introduction of the Punisher, a now significant Marvel hero. Whereas, in comparison, issue 130, the one just after that, goes for around $100 to $200, which introduces the Spider-Mobile. What do you mean you don't know what the Spider-Mobile is? It's such a significant part of the story. It's not like it was clearly Marvel trying to cash in on the fact that Batman had a mobile, and Spider-Man, a person who's exceptionally agile and swings from rope to rope, doesn't need one. Anyway, now that we've got that out of the way, let's move on to some of the more trickier elements of collectible value. So this one's also pretty obvious. If there are very few of said collectible, then that collectible is just inherently valuable due to its scarcity. This is something that is often forgotten, and is one of the biggest determinants of potentially significant collectibles being worthless, and insignificant items being worth thousands. See, one of the reasons why a Wayne Gretzky rookie card is worth so much is because there are a few hockey cards made in 1979. By around 1986, people started seeing that certain hockey cards, like that Gretzky card, started selling for big bucks, and started collecting cards themselves. Hockey companies saw this demand and started printing cards en masse. This led to a glutton of overproduced hockey cards. So, if there is something to take away from this video, it's this. If you have hockey cards from the 80s or up to the 90s, and you think they're worth anything, they're more or less probably worth nothing. Even rookie cards made in this era, like this Patrick Waugh 1986 rookie card, goes for somewhere around $100 to $300. Since then, hockey card companies have been a lot smarter with their business model, as they now print cards at a much lower rate, and have different tiers of printing. Sidney Crosby rookie cards drastically range in value, from $10 to upwards of $10,000. That's because the $10 cards are just normal cards found in boxes and printed by the dozen, whereas the $10,000 cards are printed specifically in low supply. This one I'm showing you is just one of 87 ever made. Not only that, but it's also got their own signature, and a small patch from their jersey embedded into the card, adding collectible value to it. So now you have basically two kinds of cards you can collect. Quantity printed cards for the everyday person who just wants their favorite person's hockey card, and potential investment pieces. Comic books are very comparable to hockey cards in a lot of ways. A lot of the most valuable comics are made in a time when comics weren't as popular, and there were just very few of these books around. In the 1980s and 90s, comic book publishers started overproducing these books because of the rise of comic book collectors, which ironically made those comics around that area worth almost nothing. Since then, comic book publishers now print variant covers alongside their normal counterparts at a much smaller scale, allowing both regular readers and collectors to dip into the comic book market. Video game prices are probably the most determined by the scarcity, because while most games were made en masse, some games were printed in low quantities. This is usually either because the game was released at the end of a console's lifespan, the game publishers were Japanese and didn't have faith in the North American market, or some other unusual circumstance. In reference to the first point, let's take a look at Madden 2009 as an example. Madden games are a dime a dozen, not only because they're made every year, but there is also very little difference of these games from one to another. That is, except for Madden 2009 on the Xbox original. Madden 2009 as an actual game isn't really special in any way. But because the Xbox original was pretty much obsolete at this time, and the Xbox 360 had been out for nearly 4 years, the game publishers made very few copies of this game. Because of this, Madden 2009 is one of the most rare games in the Xbox original, selling for around $50, in comparison to the usual $2 Madden games go for. My favorite example of superfluous collector's value is Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut for the Nintendo 64. Around this time, Blockbuster Video made a deal with certain game developers to make games specifically as rental exclusives at their locations, and weren't sold in retail stores. Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut is just the most notorious example of this, because only 20,000 copies of this game existed, and thus has since become the holy grail of the N64 collection, reaching prices around $1,000 just for the game alone. Trading card games like Magic and Pokemon have their own built-in scarcity, printing certain cards at specific rarity levels. Magic has commons, uncommons, rares, and mythics, whereas Pokemon has commons, uncommons, rares, and then a plethora of different variants of rares. Cards become more scarce as you move up the rarity levels because they just give you fewer of these cards per booster pack. Additionally, early first versions of trading card games are notably more valuable and scarce than other editions, because those first editions were usually underprinted in fear of the game failing. Once the game got momentum and popularity, they'd print newer sets at a higher quantity. As I mentioned before, Black Lotus is the most valuable Magic card available, selling for around $650,000 online. However, this Lotus is from the set Alpha, which was the first Magic set. In comparison, you can find Black Lotuses for sale around $18,000 because it's from the set Unlimited, the third Magic set, and a set that was much more widely available and is easily differentiated by their different colored borders. For Pokemon cards, the Holy Grail, as I've mentioned, is the original Charizard card. However, the most valuable version of this card, recently sold for around $200,000, is the first edition Shadowless Hollow Foil Charizard card. Note the symbol in the left, the shining art, the font where it says HP, and that the lack of a backdrop shadow behind the art. In contrast, here's an eBay sold listing for a Unlimited Charizard, a newer set that was printed on more en masse than first edition. Note the lack of the Edition 1 symbol, the shadow behind the artwork, and the thickness of the letters HP. This version, in comparison, was sold for $550. Even though these cards are the exact same card, and their differences are so minute, one of them was worth 400 times more money. This is almost only because the more expensive one is a lot more rare and a lot more scarce than the cheaper one. I say almost because a lot of these values that you hear are when that thing is at perfect condition. A Black Lotus can be worth $650,000, but it could also be worth $50,000. Still the Alpha set, but still the same kind of card, but $600,000 because one card's a 4 grade and one card's a 9.5 grade. See, a hidden element of scarcity is not exactly how many of them exist anymore, but how many of them exist at a good condition. Back in the day, a lot of these collectibles were owned and purchased by kids, and kids don't really have a concept of how to keep things in good condition. Something like a hockey card, you don't really think that it's going to be worth 6 digits because it's a hockey card, it's a toy. So you toss it at the wall, you kind of trade it with your friends, shuffle it around, use it as a bike spoke because you think that rare rookie card going to make your bike go faster, when in the end you maybe have just lost, $100 just like that. Never mind comic books. So even if something does exist in large quantity, being in mint condition is usually more important for the actual value of the card or the collectible, because so few of that collectible exists in that state. There might be millions of those Wayne Gretzky cards in existence for all I know, but the reason that one sold for $400,000 is because it's a 9.5 grade out of 10. So let's get into what these ratings mean and what condition kind of generally means. If your collectible's in good condition, it's worth a lot more and more sought after than one that's in bad condition. As you've probably been seeing through the segment, you'll notice that a lot of these cards and collectibles are encased in see-through plastic and have these stickers up top that have a big number up there. This is the grade of the collectible, its determined condition. These gradings are done by professional graders who take their collectible and assess its elements. Creases, corners, color to see if it's faded, and any other scuffs or marks that makes it look less than perfect. Once that's done, they give it a grade, usually between 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 depending on the grading company, seal it in this hard plastic, and send it back to you. For a fee, of course. Having your collectible graded gives you a bunch of things. First of all, it gives you peace of mind that your collectible won't reduce in any more condition from there on. Also, it also means that those who are buying from you will know exactly what they're investing in. They know that if you are selling a 6.5 grade version of that card or collectible, that is what they're getting. There's no kind of question, you can't really kind of scam, can't really Photoshop it. Some professional has seen it, and they are saying this is a 6.5 out of 10. Keep in mind, though, that if your collectible is in really rough shape, it's probably not worth sending it in for grading. Collectibles that are graded at 2 or 2.5 out of 10 aren't really sought after if you encase it, because you usually grade a collectible to preserve its condition. If it's already at that condition, a few more scuffs and bruises aren't really gonna do any more to move it from a 2 to a 1.5, really. Gradings are important for cards and comics, but not so much for video games. That's because most video games you kind of want to play at some point, and they're intended to be played. So Encasing it in a hard plastic case makes the game completely obsolete. Another sticky element of video game collectability is whether the game is still complete in box. Is the game still have its box and its manual? The majority of us, most of us, just kind of kept the cartridge for itself and just tossed the manual and the box out, because you don't need all this for this. Look how much space it takes up. You can just toss this thing around because this thing's not going to die. It's going to survive an apocalypse for all we know. Not only that, it also makes it an interesting thing because most modern games, like this one here, comes in the case, is protected by the case, and kind of inherently makes it easier for you to keep the disc inside. And it's really easy to just keep the manual inside. So being complete in box has different elements of value. If you do still have your game box and manuals though, anticipate getting a lot more money for your game. A common game like Super Mario 64 goes for something like $40 by itself on eBay, whereas it can go for upwards of $150 if you still got the box and manual. It might just be a cardboard and booklet, but in the end, that stuff is worth more to a collector than the actual game itself. But then that raises the question, how many people are collectors and how many people are just buying the game? How many people are going to hound you for that $25 cartridge, and how many people are really interested in a $100 box and manual and cartridge? That then leads us to our third point, or another point that's very important, which is demand. Any commodity applies to the simple economics of supply and demand. If there's a lot of something and there's no demand for it, prices go down. If there's no supply and there's lots of demand, prices go up. You can have the nicest, best condition rookie cards, or complete in-box video games, or even a mint condition 9.8 graded first issue comic, but if no one wants to buy it, you can't sell it. Oh, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. As I said, collectibles are most valuable when they are scarce and they are important. But keep in mind, probably the most important thing to see if you're actually going to get any money for it is whether it's in good condition. Otherwise, that card, that thing, could be worth $1,000, might just be worth $30 because it's banged up. In the end, if you're looking for prices, make sure you do your research. Go on eBay, go on different websites, kind of look for different sources. There's plenty of websites for everything to kind of help you determine what a price of something is. There's a couple video game charting prices, there's a comic book charting price website, and etc, etc. But if you are looking on eBay, make sure to look first on the sold listings. This is very important because you can see what people have been buying for it recently. If they're around $50 now, but someone's selling for $100, then maybe try selling it for $60. That's it. That's all I have for now. Stephen, back to you. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Before we move on to our next segment, let's take a short break. I'll see you soon. So, with COVID being what it is, many of us have had to turn to different means of entertainment to keep ourselves preoccupied. For some, it's been kind of easy, and for others, we've been getting a little stir-crazy. But for others, this has been seen as an opportunity. My friend, James Clark, has since started a Twitch gaming channel called Fishy956, where he plays video games, live streams his chat, live streams himself, and communicates with people who are his audience. For those who don't know, Twitch is a live streaming website similar to YouTube, where you are able to watch live events in real time. This platform is used for a plethora of things, such as hosting professional esports events, creating virtual music concerts, hosting live podcasts, or even just opening a box of trading card booster packs. However, most of the videos on Twitch are live stream video games. The reason why is because Twitch has become a very popular way for people to watch these live stream video games in comparison to how it used to be on YouTube for a few reasons. For starters, as a creator, you don't have to go back and edit your video. Once it's done, it's done. As a person who went and made a Let's Play on YouTube and had to edit stuff and kind of, go through that whole process, that's a huge bonus. And on the second part, as for the audience, you get a lot more of a personal experience because you are watching the person at that exact moment playing that game. You can join them in the game, you can talk to them while they're playing, and if a good creator comes along, they will communicate with their audience members. Regardless, James's channel, Fishy956, which he started in July, has since grown from having 0 followers to 340 followers, which is pretty good for a burgeoning new Twitch channel. And it continues to grow to this day. So, I sat down with James, spoke to him about his channel, about what he's done in the past, what he continues to do, and what he will do in the future. Steven, let's go give him a call. Thanks, Steven. So, James, we were talking about your Twitch channel. Do you want to get into that a bit?
Absolutely, yes. I have a stream on twitch.tv. It's called Fishy956. I like fish and the number 956. So basically what I do is I have a schedule and I jump on for about 4 hours or so, and I play some games with friends, random people I've met online. We just kind of hang out and have some fun with it. It's pretty cool.
It's super chill every time I've watched it. I know the answer to this, but what is the significance to Fishy956?
Well, this is kind of a funny story. Back in, I think, 2005, there was a popular MMO, massive multiplayer online game called RuneScape. I know you know it. I say it got hacked when I was a kid. I'm pretty sure I just forgot the password, which is ironic. So the next day I tried to play it again. I was like, oh, I don't know my account. I got to make a new one already. And I was like, well, my password was Fishy before, because there was a fish bowl next to my computer at the time. I'm like, so now Fishy's going to be my username. And my old username was Swordsman123. So very exciting. And then I made my password Swordsman123. And it was and that one moment is like the reason I'm Fishy to this day. And the numbers, it was just a randomized list of numbers because Fishy was taken.
Oh, okay.
And so my favorite number was 9. I was born in 1995, and I was like, well, the 6 is just there tacked on.
So in terms of kind of games, what's like the stuff that you usually like streaming?
Yeah. So my schedule used to be a little more rigid. Now it's kind of more freeform. So I always stick to at least one time a week I play Call of Duty. It was sort of my initial drive to stream in the first place, and I have a lot of fans that like that. So I play most of the time the newest Call of Duty. Sometimes I'll reach back into the old games as well. But otherwise, for the other 3 streams a week, because I do 4 total, I have one that's like a random multiplayer game that could be whatever people suggest, or if I want to try a new one. The other 2 streams of the week are just Let's Plays of anything. A total variety. Right now I'm doing Half-Life 2. I've done Donkey Kong Country. I've done like a Zelda game. I've done Metroid. It's complete variety, and that's the way I like to do it because that's how I play games. Like people, when friends come over, and we can't do that right now, and that's what this stream kind of helps with. Is oh, today I played Mario 3D World. Let's play some Mario, man. Whatever, and then you kind of get into whatever you kind of vibe with at the time.
Sick, got solid. What would you say is kind of like the streams that got a lot of popularity, like kind of got a lot of traction?
Oh, wow. Well, there was one that immediately comes to mind. It was in December. I still remember the exact moment it happened. I was playing through the first Metal Gear Solid game, and I was just hanging out, and I've been kind of telling my viewers that, I want to play Metal Gear Solid at some point. Maybe we can play through them all. And I was just, a casual stream. Everything was normal. And then about halfway through, I got raided by the largest Metal Gear Solid streamer on the platform. And he rating, what that means is they take their stream viewers that they're currently streaming, and they're about to finish their stream. So they take all of their viewers and they plug it into your stream. And that even persists after they're fully offline. They have nothing there. If someone goes to their page, it'll say hey, this person suggests Fishy. And so I was on it was top Metal Gear. And it was really, really big. And the initial boost of people, he brought 515 viewers over with him. And I think at the time I had 8. And so I looked over, I was like, and so I was like, guys, welcome. This is what we're doing. Holy crap. And then I remember saying, we're going to beat this whole game tonight. And then later on, I had an incentive where if I get enough donations, I want to start the second game. That's the one where I was up so late that I could hear everyone starting their day. And I was just fine. So that was definitely the most exciting stream, and it was sort of like a freak occurrence. That's the fun of Twitch. I think you kind of sometimes get crazy things happening to you, and you just know what to plan for it.
It was crazy because I think that
Mm.
was also the first day that Cyberpunk 2077 came out. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, coming from that, a lot of my viewers, they want me to do something else when something big is popular, just like you said.
Uh,
Like they wanted me specifically to stream on the Super Bowl day, something that's completely unrelated, and Valentine's Day, something that's completely unrelated. And so I think a lot of people are looking to kind of escape that crowd mentality of what's happening at the time, what's the trend kind of thing. And it's very interesting because usually you think, when you're on the internet, you want a trend, but sometimes you want to anti-trend. You want to, counter the trend, and that's exactly I think what you're saying is.
but if say somebody else wanted to start their own Twitch channel, what would you
Mhm.
suggest you would do to kind of grow your channel?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's an excellent time to start. A lot of people I know all started during this kind of lockdown. There's a larger emphasis on people who want to connect online with other people, and I know it's at least in Canada, it's slowly loosening up, but I think there's still going to be long-lasting effects for it. So I think it's still a good time to get into it. What worked for me and what kept me going is finding games and times that work for you and they're enjoyable, so it feels less like work. And then as long as you stick with it and you have a schedule and you don't really take too many days off and you kind of just you keep it going and people start to come and they check you out and they expect you at certain times. Sometimes you'll get a crazy 500 viewer raid, and some days you'll stream the whole day and you'll have 3 people watching you. But
Yeah.
as long as you're happy and you're good with sticking with it just for you, then I think it'll go a long way.
Perfect. Excellent. That's a great finalizing statement. I'd like to
Mhm.
thank you for coming on to the show, James. I'll just send it back to you, Stephen. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. That's all I've got for Hammer D20. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. See y'all later, alligators.